So, hi everyone. This is Austin from MSA, and we're very happy to have with us today Anna Kreshchenko from Flora. And this is our second webinar regarding entrepreneurship for foreigners in Japan. And one reason that I really want to stress why we do this is because I know, we all know that sometimes being an employee and being a salaryman is not necessarily the best option for many of us here in Japan. And it's not necessarily the best option for Japan to have us as employees, because many times I think that we can contribute more as people who do our own things as versus being employed by someone else. And so this is why we're actually giving you this, doing these kind of webinars so that you can get some information about the other options about starting something yourself. And hopefully that for your information, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. Entrepreneurship is not easy. I think Anna can speak for that. But the thing is that, it is an option that I think that more people should consider. So for the people who just joined in, just remember that we have a poll. Please answer the poll. We want to understand a bit more about you. And that if you have questions, please put your questions inside the Q&A. So yes, they put your questions in the Q&A and upvote questions that you like. So, but I won't talk too much more. I just want to pass the time over to Anna, and so that Anna can tell us a bit more about your story, so that you can get some background for some discussion that we can have later on. Okay, so Anna, time is yours.
Okay, great. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I'm going to talk about me, about Flora, about our story. It will basically be like a history of how I started when I came to Japan, what I studied, how did it become so that I started it in my company. And then I hope we can have a discussion and you can ask any questions, and maybe I will have useful answers for them. So it's okay to interrupt me with your Q&As anytime. Like, I might forget something. It might be better to answer your question on the spot. I might not always notice the Q&A part. So maybe if that is something relevant to the presentation, maybe Austin can also help me to be aware of the questions.
Okay, so I'll just I may interrupt you in case I spot something that's immediate.
Okay.
But we will try to put the Q&A at the end after everything's finished.
Yeah, I mean, let's just have a casual thing here.
Sounds good.
Cool. So I'll be sharing the slides. I'm really sorry the slides are design catastrophe, because I was merging it from different presentations. And for some reason, PowerPoint is really bad at merging slides. So I'm sorry for that. And also the slides are in Japanese, but I'm going to talk about everything that's written in the slides. So if you cannot read, it doesn't matter, just maybe you can look at the slides. And so, don't worry. Okay, so a little bit of self-introduction. Again, my name is Anna. I'm 25 years old. I'm from Ukraine. I came to Japan in 2017. I studied 1 year in Osaka University in Mino campus, and then I went to Kyoto University, Faculty of Law. I'm a Max undergraduate. Right now, I went to the business school for the MBA. Whether I will be graduating from there or not, it's a different question, but I'm still there. In 2020, we made a legal entity out of, the legal entity called Flora, but I actually started working on that startup maybe a year or year and a half before. Okay, so how did it, okay, first, what are we doing? We are in the market that is called femtech. Femtech is a word combined of female and technology. This is the IT solutions that cater to mostly women's healthcare needs. We believe we're basically supporting women from teenage years into menopause, creating this ecosystem of solutions for every stage of women's life. Okay, yeah, so it looks like this. The slide is broken, I'm sorry. Not my fault, PowerPoint's fault. Well, so right now we have an app for period tracking and fertility. We also have a service called Flora for Bees. It's it's for women who are in the workforce, and we're supporting. We're basically supporting their performance and visualizing what problems what problems company has with regards to the health of their female employees. Okay, and then we're planning to expand more into menopause and into different stages of women's life. Okay, so how did it all start for me? Was it when I was a second year? Oh, actually, I was a first year. It was the end of my first year at Kyoto University, something like I became a first year student in 2018. So it was like February, something like that. I went to the US. In Kyoto University, we have a super cool program. It's called Kingfisher Leadership Program. They basically, you get a scholarship to go for almost 3 weeks to the US, and they take you to Google, Silicon Valley, Stanford University. They also go to the East Coast. Super cool. If somebody from Kyoto University is here, definitely apply. And it was there that I first kind of met with this concept of social entrepreneurship. And I thought that it's actually a really interesting idea to do business, to do sustainable business, and at the same time make a contribution to the society and solve some kind of a social problem. So it was my first inspiration, and that's what I started to think about doing something on my own. So how it became so that I became involved with femtech. So basically my cousin, she was later at that time, she was suffering from prenatal depression, and prenatal depression resulted in a lot of health complications during her pregnancy. And at that time, I figured that actually this kind of problems, there's a lot of this kind of problems all over the world, and a lot of them are not yet, there's no solution, right? And mental health and physical health are really intertwined, and it is super important to take care of them both. And especially in case of women, there is no like IT solutions that would both support your physical and mental well-being. And that's how I discovered femtech and said, oh, that's actually something that I might be interested in, because not only it has some social value, it's also economically really like promising market, and especially in Japan. So I got this idea. I got a draft. Okay, so coming back a bit to the Kingfisher Leadership Program. So there I met basically the woman that was sponsoring the whole program. She was opening an incubator in Kyoto, right near Kyoto University, the Faculty of Medicine. And I asked her, what do you think? Should I start a business in Japan? And she was like, well, actually, I wouldn't suggest you. I would say that if you can, just go to Europe or the US somewhere. But since you're studying already here in Japan, actually, I'm opening this kind of incubator. So if you're interested, just apply. Well, I didn't have a choice. I was a second year student, so I wasn't going away without finishing my degree. And that's why I was thinking about, doing a project and a degree at the same time. And I applied to Phoenixy with some kind of, it wasn't a cool idea. I'm still not sure why I was accepted, but they were really eager to, to have more students involved, to have more younger people involved. So I got accepted. And at that time, actually, it wasn't only me, it was a group of friends, because at that time, I was trying to get to know a lot about entrepreneurship, and mostly every incubator or accelerator says that you cannot apply on your own. You have more chances if you have a team. So I was like, well, I want to have more chances. And I asked my friends to apply with me. It was 4 of us in the beginning. And So basically the incubation program was like, for half a year, we were doing something. There was a lot of lectures. There was a lot of me trying to do at least something. And the biggest result, I think, was the crowdfunding that we did for the app that we wanted to do at that time. And for 1 year, all we did was basically this crowdfunding. Well, so actually I made a lot of mistakes. And I wanted to share this kind of mistakes. I like talking about them. At that time, I didn't have a company. It was basically a team of friends that got into Incubator and was trying to do something. And we basically had like 3 pages of an application and a crowdfunding. And we weren't sure what to do with all that money. And the biggest mistakes that we did, I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot lately, so my voice is weird. So I would say that I made 3 mistakes that I would suggest you not to repeat. Well, first of all, I would not suggest starting a business with your friends. I think there are pros and cons, but in most cases, in like 90% of cases, there are more cons than pros. And I guess the second part is related to this. We started a team, we started to work on a project before we actually decided what will be the roles of each other, how much time we will contribute to that, in what way we will divide the shares between us, etc., etc. So since we were friends, it was, we were all on the same level, and it was very difficult to pursue someone's accountability. And the third biggest mistake that I've ever made was I fell in love with my idea. I was super excited. I thought that if I only believe in myself, I can do whatever it takes to do, I can succeed, etc., etc. And looking back, I think that's really, really wrong. You should not fall in love with the idea. You should fall in love with the problem that you want to solve, because one problem has a million ways of solving it, and the first that you came up with might not be the best one, and you should be flexible enough to change parts of it, to be able to adjust to the market, to adjust to customer needs. You should not be doing something that you think is best for your customer. You should be listening to your customer, to their needs, desires, to their fears, to their preference, etc. And your solution, your idea should be born out of that. Okay. I wanted to skip that, but the beginning is really funny, so I can show you the video. After doing for a year, after doing something with the team of my friends, I figured that it's probably not the best team that I wanted to continue working with. And actually at that time, I met my co-founder. Now we're working together. And I wanted to go to Techstars. I'm not sure whether you know Techstars, but it's a really cool accelerator. And I wanted to go to the US. And the beginning of the video that we made for the Techstars is a bit funny, so I wanted to share. Okay, I'm sorry. Could have been a bit weird. Yeah, we didn't get into Techstars, but wait a sec, how do you move on? But it was still pretty cool. At least I started to feel that something is going on. And in 2020, in December, we made a legal entity. It wasn't, I think I could have done it earlier. I was afraid to actually create like a true company. I was afraid because of legal issues, because it takes a lot of money in Japan. I can talk about it later, but it takes a lot of money and it's complicated. Also, it takes a lot of money to close the venture if it doesn't succeed. So I was not sure whether I should do it or not. But at that time, to we got into the accelerator. Maybe somebody knows Plug and Play. It's quite big in Japan. And to work with big companies when they were talking to us. So it was a complete, it was really devastating for the brand image to say that you're still not a legal entity. So it was impossible to talk with other corporates and other companies. So we actually did it in 2020 in December. And after doing that, we were working on an application for pregnant women, and we released it in basically like 4 months. So it was a pretty cool development. Before, I had a team that in a year haven't done anything apart from like crowdfunding, and now in 4 months we did an app and released it. And well, at least judging from the like operational efficiency, it wasn't bad. But at that time, we also made a lot of mistakes. So the thing that we did so fast was pretty cool. But the mistakes were, at that point, I thought that all I needed to do was to make a great product, and then I just put it into the market, put it on the App Store or Google Play, and everybody's going to download it. And this is a huge lie and huge illusion. And it's virtually impossible nowadays to do something like this. It's impossible to do something with a marketing channel. At the same time, I also knew nothing about unit economy. If we're talking about apps, there's a lot of KPIs for unit economy, right? CAC or CPI, or cost per download, cost per purchase, ARPU, etc., etc. My huge mistake was that I didn't know this kind of detailed information about this market. And actually in Japan, probably you cannot, I wouldn't say that there's any seminar, or at least free one, seminar or workshop that would tell you about this. So if you're interested in an app business, be sure to participate in study groups or product schools, startup schools abroad. Yeah, and the third mistake is we were just trying to create something new, to create something that's not on the market yet. And in 90% of cases, it also fails. I mean, well, first of all, I said that for me, ideas are worthless without execution. Also, a lot of people can come up with the same ideas. And if you come up with something that you think is new, there's 99% chance that somebody on the other side of the world or on the other side of Japan has already thought about it. And the fact that you don't know about that idea, or the fact that that idea didn't become a successful business, might be that there is a problem with that idea. So if you're thinking about something new, be prepared that there's a huge chance that it might fail. And finally, at that time, I didn't know how to conduct user interviews. Unfortunately, user interviews is not just talking to people. I would say that it's art, and you need to read a few books to actually get a grasp on that. Because to create a product that actually solves somebody's needs, you need to talk like an hour to them before they open up about their problems, about their fears, and about something that they're suffering from. I can suggest, if you're interested in conducting user interviews, I can suggest a good book. It's called The Mom Test by, what's his name? Rob Fitzpatrick. That's a good one. Yes, so it's starting to be a bit like a lecture, I'm sorry, but the principles that I got from my experience is, first, if you're doing a startup, launch fast, fail fast. You don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of runway, and you don't have a lot of time. So just launch fast and see whether it fails, or whether customers need it, whether they don't need it. Just do something, and then you can iterate and improve on it. And the second one is my favorite. It's important to do right things, not to do things right. Because if you're doing something right that's useless, you're just wasting time. And that happens a lot in startups when you're just trying to create something new or something spectacular or something that you think is cool. You might be doing financing, you might be doing legal stuff right, but you might be better off without actually doing all this stuff at all. Yeah, as Peter Drucker said, maybe you know the guy is quite famous. There's nothing more useless or worthless than doing efficiently something that should not have been done at all. And that's a really good thing to keep in mind where you're doing a startup. Okay, so for me, what worked for me and what I would suggest for every person that wanted to start their business in Japan is don't only look at the Japanese market. There's a lot of solutions that already exist in the US and in Europe, and you can actually learn from it and introduce something new to Japan. So if you're an international student or like a foreigner in Japan, be sure to utilize that resource of you being able to speak English, to communicate with people in different countries, and to have, you know, this kind of a global view, right? Secondly, I would suggest to, well, if you don't know what to do everything. Participate in different pitch events, in business competitions, in all kind of gatherings. Unfortunately, if you are doing something in Japan and if your Japanese is still, if you're not yet very professional in Japanese, I would suggest you to get professional in Japanese, because there's, I wouldn't say that there's a lot of pitch events in English where you actually can get fundings and meet right people. Also, it's related to the first point. Be sure to participate in workshops, seminars, some kind of IT schools abroad, because Japan is not a pioneer in IT business, and a lot of the approaches that are already used abroad will come to Japan only in like 2 or 3 years. And you should use that. Okay, and what worked for me, I became really involved with the Ukrainian entrepreneurship ecosystem. I'm not sure whether a lot of you are familiar with that, but actually we have like huge IT schools and huge businesses that make especially apps for the US and for Europe. So it became like a huge and indispensable resource for me. What I would suggest for every entrepreneur in Japan, and especially now because you might know that the market is becoming bearish, and only on Friday, Y Combinator sent an email to all their portfolio companies saying that be prepared for the worst, and the funding environment is not actually looking good this year. So I would suggest you not to create something like 100% startup-ish. So 100% something new, something super innovative, something nobody has ever heard of it, something that nobody has ever heard of. I would suggest that you start small with something that brings money, with something that will definitely work. And then as a part of it, you can try a lot of innovative approaches, a lot of ventures inside a venture, and testing new ideas. And that's something that worked for us. Yeah, so we pivoted from an app from pregnant women. We started to do mental health for women in the form of group sessions. And after that, so it was last year in 2021, we raised our seed round, and in March this year we finally released our first app for fertility and period tracking. Maybe I can talk a bit about that later if you're interested, what kind of differentiation points we have, what we don't have. In any case, be sure to what works in startups, what works in this kind of ventures is iteration, right? This kind of wheel, when you have a hypothesis, when you do it, when you measure it, and you learn from this. Employing this kind of approach worked for us, and right now we have quite a good numbers. So for example, for monthly retention, we have 21.9% when the market benchmark is 5.8. We have, and we launched it only 2 months ago, and we already have quite a, well, it's an average IAP conversion to paid users, but we have a really high customer satisfaction, and that's something I'm really proud of. I will skip this kind of introduction. Talking a bit about our company, apart from the app, we're also doing Flora for Bees. It's a service for, it's an employee benefit service. So the employees of companies that buy our service, the employees use the app. We do data analysis for them, create a kind of report and say what should be improved regarding the healthcare situation in their company. So as you can see in this computer, there's like a small sample data. We analyze symptoms, mental state, and basically the well-being of each female employee by age, by profession, by hours they spend at work. And we also calculate, we also calculate, wait a second, labor costs, how much if female employee, if the performance of that employee gets worse because of some kind of female health related problems. So there is a labor cost that ensues, and we're setting KPIs for each of the corporate to lower it during the whole year. So it's like a well-being consultation package. And we have a record of collaborating with big corporations as well as femtech startups and other startups. Well, that's all from me. Maybe you have some questions and something we can talk about.
Thanks so much for that conversation. And actually, this touches on some things that I think that it's a very interesting conversation, because this touches on many things that we did not talk about in our previous webinar, actually, regarding more of the product ideation process and things like that. Just to confirm, so Flora, I believe is in the less than 6 months from product launch. Is that accurate, or which stage would you describe yourself as?
We have several products. So last year we had one, and this year we released 2.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Just wanted to clarify that. So for everybody, just I still want your questions. Please put your questions inside the Q&A. But I just wanted to add a different thing I think that quite a few people are curious about. So the start of your story actually begins from your own your friends, your family's experience actually back in Ukraine, right? But what was the goal? Why did you actually use that experience to create a product for the Japanese market? In the sense, was there any particular thought process behind that?
I would say that I didn't have a lot of choice. As I mentioned, I was already in Japan at that time, and I also wanted to do something on my own, to create something, as they say, from 0 to 1. And I didn't want to drop out from my university, and that's why I did it in Japan. But it's not the only reason. Another reason is it's something that, as I thought, could be successful in Japan. That's why I also did it.
Definitely. Also because I work in tech as well, and we know that it's a very male-dominated sphere, and there's definitely a lack of of like services for that talk about like, that address femtech needs. Yeah. Everyone, upvote the questions that you want. And let me just let me just ask Martin's question. So you did law in university and currently you're doing your MBA. And the question is about the software engineering part of your products. Did you develop the website and your apps by yourself? Any thoughts? Any response to that?
No, I'm in charge of the business part, and also I do some design and the general user experience. The backend and the app, etc., is done by, well, first we have a team of software engineering in the company, but my co-founder, it all started with me being in charge of business and my co-founder doing the development, and then we expanded to having a team of software engineers.
Okay. So let's see. So basically, like it's basically the CEO CTO split basically, and you have a team, and I'm assuming that actually like looking at website, are most of your engineers like overseas right now?
Yes, we
exactly,
have a lot of overseas engineers. Yes.
This is also the part that you were talking about, leveraging your resources from overseas, from back home, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Next question: how did you get your initial funding for your startup? Or if there's any other comments that you want to give about the funding process, things that surprise you or anything like that,
Yeah, what do you mean initial? Like are you talking about seed round, or you're talking about something? It never happens in Japan, so that first you get the money and then you do something. First you do something, you invest. You might invest your scholarship if that's enough in your business model. You might invest your salary, but first, or just maybe your working hours, if that's something that you can create on your own. Then you have kind of a prototype or something resembling product market fit, and then you can get funding.
So basically, this is not the idea that maybe you find in Silicon Valley is that, you bring an idea around and you get seed funding from that, right? So you have to kind of show.
Yes. You definitely, you probably have to do this basically anywhere apart from Silicon Valley. And I'm not even sure it works in 100% of cases.
Probably not.
So it's a big bias that founders have, and big misunderstanding that founders have regarding funding. Maybe when we're talking about something like biotechnology or something that's really depends heavily on research, when you're in university, you're like a university professor or a graduate student, and you develop some kind of new approach, it works, you have papers regarding this, and maybe you can have, well, mostly universities or university related funds will invest in you, but that's a different story. I'm not talking about that. That's actually a world that I'm also not really knowledgeable of. I'm talking about, like other cases when you're a consumer oriented company, or even B2B is different.
I just wanted to do a sidetrack because I think we've got enough like responses from the poll that we did just now. Just showing everyone here how the poll is doing, so that you can kind of get an idea of who else is participating in this. So, so for people who, most of you are students, quite a few of you are actually working in Japan right now. But looks like we have 3 people who already started your own companies, and 4 of you who are already planning to start your own company. Now this is a relatively like informal thing. So if, for example, you want to have a more of like a individual chit chat with like like Anna, I can actually turn on talking for some of you. So if you want to do this, so please put so inside the chat that okay, I've got this question, I would love to do this, like have a conversation or have a like conversation with Anna, and I may pick you depending on your content, and I may bring you up to talk on voice. So yeah, just be aware of that. So okay, we finished the funding question, and we have a question about networking. Now, this is, I think, in particular relevant because of the past 2 years that we've had where we couldn't really network in real life. But so with that considered as well, do you have any suggestions about attending more networking events? Any way to find these events? I will follow you by talking about the Tokyo scene, but for your side, what is your response to networking events and how to find networking opportunities?
Just Google it. Actually, it's pretty easy. It's super easy. It's way easier than you might think that it is. Google it. Find a lot of media that's writing about entrepreneurship. And if it's kind of a big media, they probably have gathering events. Go to your, like in case of Kyoto, it's Kyoto Shoukou Kaigisho, right? Kyoto, the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. In Tokyo, it's Tokyo Chamber of Industry and Commerce. There's a lot of events that they do. Go to one, talk to other people. Other people will definitely, if you ask them, they will tell you about different events that they also are having. Maybe your university also does something. It's a pretty easy research. So I would say that the basic knowledge of Japanese and Google will be enough to get a grasp on that.
Just to follow up on that based on what I know, right? So number one, the thing is that most of the big national universities in Japan will have some sort of innovation program or acceleration program right now. So the first thing you can do is please approach your university. They will offer, if you qualify for their programs, often they have programs where you can link up with other industrial figures where you can actually do your networking, number one. Number two, if of course there's Google. There's Google, there is meetup.com. There is Compass, which is the Japanese version of meetup.com. They also do both, I believe, but in-person events are restarting now. I know of tech conferences that are restarting already, but there are still lots of online, online events as well. And yeah, please Google, take a look at those. Meetup is not necessarily a bad platform. And another thing is, right, just a bit of advice. Many of times you're like, is this event going to be worth it? Just go, just go and try.
Yeah.
You never know what you can get from meeting random people, and that's sometimes the most valuable things can appear and can grow from random meetings. So yeah, just one bit of advice for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot of, also as I mentioned, mailing lists which you can subscribe to, and they send all the new info. Well, your Chamber of Commerce. Then there's, if you go to the Chamber of Commerce page, they have lots of external links. Just subscribe to all the mail lists that they have, and they will send you all the information about seminars, workshops, and as well as grants and subsidies right to your email, to your inbox. So that's also big.
Yeah. So we got a question about Japanese ability. So the question is, the question is about your fluency is in Japanese as the founder. Would you say it's impossible to start a company here if you, the founder, are not fluent in Japanese business level and a Japanese business proficiency? Have you ever had language barrier issues when talking to clients and partners? Yeah, your experience about this.
My experience, well, okay. As for my Japanese level, I graduated from, I studied law in Japanese. I can read, write, and I generally don't have any problem communicating. So have I ever experienced this kind of communication wall? Yes, I have had, because I'm still a foreigner. Even if I know the language, I might not know a lot of, like, a million of the small details regarding business protocol. It was hard at first, but then you get used to it. If you have a zero knowledge of Japanese, I would say that it's going to be hard. It depends on how much resources you have to start. If you have resources to hire or to just find a Japanese co-founder or a co-founder that's fluent in Japanese and would like to work with you, regardless of anything, then you're fine. And if you can also hire some sales team or marketing team, it's also fine. If you don't have resources, it might be difficult. I think it would be difficult.
Much agreed. Now I am going to do a bit of a diversion here, because our last webinar with Kenny Song actually talks talks about this because Kenny himself is not a Japanese fluent, but he has a Japanese co-founder. And so he pretty much takes more of the CTO role because he is an engineer as well. So it depends on.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention my CTO doesn't speak Japanese, so it's
No, so
if you're okay with that, if you're okay to be like a technical founder, it's fine.
Yeah. I also want to say that it also depends on what problem you want to solve. Now, if you are, if you do not have a Japanese founder, but you're trying to do something that is very technical, mechanical engineering based, for example, there is still a relatively strong chance that you can succeed if you're doing a very technical thing. However, if you're trying to do something that is consumer facing or business side facing, like for example, Flora is dealing with Japanese customers, right? And if no one in the team, the founding team, can speak Japanese fluently, it's going to be a bit of a tough job for you to understand the market, do user interviews and so on and so forth. So it does depend on the model and the problem that you're trying to solve. On that point, I am putting in the chat once again the link to our first. I'll put it later, like the link to our first webinar, so in case anybody has missed it so far. We have a question on that point about user interviews. Whom did you approach? How did you approach them? How did you find them? That's another important point. And what kind of resources did you use aside from the book that you mentioned just now?
Yes. So the first one is what kind of interviews was it, or how do I approach?
Or whom did you approach? How did you approach?
Who did I approach? Potential customers. So in our case, it was women from, what was it, from 20 to 40, something like this. We defined the age group. I approached friends that worked for me, but at some point. So say if you need 5 people, maybe your friends is okay. When we wanted to go like full scale and had like 100 user interviews before we actually launched the app, we used Facebook advertisement. It's not very hard. You can find users. I think I spent like $300, something like this. And we found everything, like everybody that we needed.
Understood. There was also one part of the question is about the resources that are being used. But so was there any other book or something like that that you referenced regarding user interviews? Or any courses? Or any courses that you took, or any courses that you took online, for example, regarding this topic?
I would say the mom test, the one that I mentioned, and also look into JTBD. It's called Job to Be Done. It's a like theory of approaching user interviews, and there's a lot of resources online, materials online if you Google it. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question, this is, we've mainly been talking about things from a B2C standpoint so far, but the question here is, how did you approach the companies as a first step of expanding Flora business? So this is like, how do you start? How do you get your first B2B customers?
The first, well, I would say how in general I approach them. I actually don't remember which one was, which funnel worked for the first one. In general, I participate in a lot of workshops, events. I network a lot. So I get a lot of, visiting cards. And when we started Flora for Biz, I had like around 1,000 emails to which I could send and say, hey guys, we're starting this. If you want to talk about this, I'm open. We're doing this. There was like long email. And from that, we got a lot of people who were interested. But of course, not only that, we have a salesperson that writes emails to a lot of people, and we have a salesperson that goes to different, exhibitions or something related to healthcare or women's health. And I would say that visiting card actually works the best when you first talk face to face. But just calling the company and saying, hello, this is something that we provide. It actually, in some cases, it worked well for us too. So just try everything you can try.
We talked about funnels here. So basically multiple funnels. Number one is your own network. And by extension, I guess one piece of advice that we can talk about from here is that really your name card and giving your name card out and getting name cards from other people is still important in this country, right?
I mean, that's the biggest marketing channel. might be, because it's really personal, and having a good like name card, and storing name cards of people you met, and actually writing like personalized emails when you say, oh, hello. Not like senjitsu arigatou gozaimashita, but something like, I met you at that workshop, it was really nice talking to you about this, like, and now I'm doing this, maybe you're interested and we can talk. That's a good business, that's good business manners, and it also brings results.
Yeah, I mean, I also use my own for the MSAs.
Yeah, you definitely should. I mean,
very important, because the thing is that, especially for a B2B, it is one way of building trust with people and actually telling people that you remember them, and so that they should remember you. It's a two-way street in that way. And that was one point. The other one was inside sales. It's basically, that's what we were talking about, right? Like inside sales, the person like doing the calling, like the cold calling, right? It's another funnel that people could think about when they're doing B2B businesses in Japan. We have another question, which is, could you talk about your first customer? Since we've talked about B2B already, how did you do your first customer marketing for your B2C services? Any things that you could share share with us regarding the marketing that you did? Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, developing an app, developing any IT service, it takes time. For us, it took like 4 months maybe. And while we were the developing team, we're actually working on production. We have like marketing team and operations team that consists of just like 5 people. And we did events. We were investing also in Instagram presence. What else did we do? Yeah, we also have a line, and not line. Yeah, mail works best. So it was basically, we're creating a fan base on Instagram. Like we also have the mail. How do you call this? Like mailing list. Yeah, mailing list stuff. Like once or twice a week, sending some news. Or some information about health, information about like news, like new events, or say some grants that were decided by the Japanese government, etc. So like useful information for people, for women that actually like read it, you know. So we were building the fan base before we launched, and that's how we got our first customers. That's how we got our first paying customers, and then we continued to work on these marketing channels. We also running ads. We participating in different like events, doing PR for a company. We've been on TV for some times lately. That also worked pretty well. Yeah.
Do everything, basically.
Yeah.
Everything. But you did mention that mail works the best. Is that your experience so far, that actually mail leads to the most, like, you know, what do you call it, like adoption rate, or like
mail has a really high engagement rate for us, even probably bigger than line and mail. It's really cool because it goes directly in the inbox, you know. It's not just Instagram or Facebook when you,
there is no feed to filter you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and in my experience, mail worked quite well for us. We had like some skyrocketing engagement rate. I don't remember. I wasn't in charge of that, but I remember it was pretty good.
I see. On that note, actually, but for people to enter your line or enter your mailing list in the first place, they need to add you as a friend or need to subscribe to your mail.
We had a website.
We had a website.
A website, and also on Instagram, we were like we were saying like, if you want to get more insights and more like thoughtful pieces of information, you can subscribe to this email. So we were even our Instagram wasn't like a final step of the funnel. Even from Instagram, we were trying to make people to subscribe either to our line or email. For
people who are not familiar about this, there is something called the marketing funnel, where, you know, like, and this is ties into something called content marketing. So if people want to know more about this, please do some research about these two terms, like the marketing funnel and content marketing, because the thing is that people don't buy when they first see you. They see you multiple times, then they buy. It's a marketing concept. We move on to visa issues from the next question. How can a foreign entrepreneur stay in Japan? Is the process hard? What are your plans for the future? There's multiple questions. So let's all of these are good questions. So let's handle them in turn. So your process regarding entrepreneurship, like, you know, like a documentation and things like that. Well, what would you say? Like, how would you describe that? Yeah.
How would I describe that? It takes a lot of time to get a grasp of that. In my experience, like, I was doing everything myself. I had Shiho Shoshi that helped me, but after that, I did even the funding documents. I did everything myself, but I have a law degree, so that might be a bit helpful. How was the? I'm not sure how I should answer that question.
I mean, okay, let's put it this way. What were the difficulties?
Okay. So first, if you have a startup, and if you want to get funding later, I would suggest that you get a notary public that knows that he or she is doing with a startup, because there's like, there are details, nuances about let's say, like, stocks that you issue at the beginning when you actually create a company. I made a mistake there, and then I had to redo everything myself. It cost me like $300, I think. Well, it wasn't too big, but still was not really nice. In general, making a company in Japan cost me, but I had my co-founder, so it's split by two. I think Yonjumae.
Yeah.
So around $4,000, right?
Just put inside the chat that, you know, we're talking about notary. This is the Shiho Shoshi. Many of them have their own specialties. Just because somebody's Shiho Shoshi doesn't mean that they know about startups. Some of them may know other things, like they may do other things as well. The same thing applies for immigration lawyers, right away. So anybody who needs to approach, like, you know, Gyosei Shoshi, which is translated as either the immigration lawyer or a scrivener. Many of them do other forms of administrative law, and many of them don't actually know the immigration law correctly. So please find correct advice by a specialist if you are thinking of anything. Just a general piece of advice for everybody, not just for entrepreneurship, but for your own visa status as well. The next part of this question is your plans for the future.
My plans for the future. I hope that soon we'll be raising our Series A round. I just hope that we will do this. My plans are we're eyeing the IPO in Japan in 5 years, and also actually create this kind of ecosystem that I mentioned, ecosystem of solution that creates that covers every stage of women's life.
IPO in Japan, 5 years. I mean, I'm not sure how far we can talk. We should go into this, because I'm like, are we going to think of the mothers like in the stock market and but I think that's a bit too advanced for this, so let's not talk about this. The last part of this question is, do you have any advisor or a business mentor that you go to ask for help in your trouble?
That's a tricky question, because we have a lot of advisors, and I normally, when I have some problem, when I'm not sure how to solve it, I always talk to somebody. So I wouldn't say that I have one advisor. I just know different people who are good at different things. And if I have problems with marketing, I call somebody who has experience with marketing. I don't have like one advisor whom I ask everything. And actually, I have met a lot of problems on my way that I think I couldn't get advice for. Having a startup is quite lonely, so you won't be getting mentoring all the time. And even if you have a mentor, it might be a mentor who was, say, he or she launched a startup in 2000s, and they have experience about that. But the market has changed a lot. The approaches has changed a lot. So even if it's some star person, he might not be helpful at the stage that your startup is in. So
makes sense. But the people that you call, these are also the people that you meishi with, I'm assuming, right? All that networking.
Yeah, it might be just some friends. I have a lot of startup friends in Ukraine too. Okay. When I was in Incubator, I had a mentor, and we're still keeping in touch, communicating about what can be done, how can he help me, how can I do something for their company. I just have a lot of also friends who are doing their startups, and if I know somebody who say, well, if I'm thinking about maybe adding some e-commerce function in my app, right? I have a friend that's doing e-commerce in some kind of industry, and I'm just shooting them a Facebook message and say, oh, I'm thinking about this, maybe we can talk about it.
I just, on that point, it's not really so much of e-commerce, but I guess one thing that many people, especially the people who are thinking of starting their own company, right? And who have already started their own company, one thing that people are always very unsure about, and this applies to things that I do as well, pricing. So just I mean, of course, the thing is that pricing shifts. Your current status is not your final status, your pricing plans and whatsoever. Were there any considerations that you had when you were deciding, for example, your B2C paid subscription plan, like, like how are you going to do it?
B2C is fairly easy. I'm not sure why people struggle so much about it. B2B is hard. B2C, you have to look at your competitors, you have to run simulations for your cost and your profit, so that your profit is bigger than your cost. And then you just go with the first price, with the price that suits for you, and then you A/B test. You change and look whether it gets better or not. So it's fairly easy. For B2B, just experience, just talking with people and looking at their reaction, whether they're okay to pay that price or not. No other option.
Much agreed on that. Okay. So this is an interesting question here, and this does affect things like, for example, the IPO that you mentioned. Do you plan to expand outside Japan? What are some things that we need to keep in mind when doing so?
Expanding outside Japan.
Yeah.
It depends. It's definitely not our first priority right now, because I see a lot of blue ocean industries here in Japan, and it's basically low-hanging fruits, and I think that you can do a lot in Japan, and that's why I prefer to do something in Japan first. To look for when you're expanding outside Japan, you will probably, if you're going on a global scale, be prepared that you have global competitors that probably are way stronger than your Japanese competitors, and be prepared to deliver on a global scale and to compete on a global scale.
This is a common thread in Japanese entrepreneurship, by the way, for everybody who's listening. Basically, in Japan, you may have 2 competitors. Outside of Japan, you have 200. And the thing is that, it's definitely a different ball game. Which is also partly why sometimes sticking to Japan increases the success rate. And I realized one thing though, when we are talking here, because I'm a tech person and Anna, you're also a tech person, sometimes we start talking tech speak, like blue ocean. I'm like, yeah, I just need to, if anybody doesn't understand some things that we are talking about, please put inside the chat, because the thing is that I am aware that when we talk about seed, Series A, blue ocean and stuff like that, this is very tech speak. Blue ocean refers to places like, markets which are underserved. Yes. And I think this is like particularly Japanese. The Japanese use it like, blue ocean, little ocean and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes it's even Japanese tech speak that we are speaking in English. So it's very weird.
Global tech speak, right?
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Can you share about your seed funding process? How long did it take for you to raise the capital? Was it angels? Was it VCs? Was it Japanese investors, overseas investors? Yeah.
Took me half a year.
Half a year,
yes. Half a year, the process. I think I spoke to like 50 VCs. And and it's not just like one meeting, right? It's 3, 4, 5, and then you definitely have to go to Tokyo, or they come to Kyoto or Osaka in our case. The process: you prepare your pitch deck, you go to the first investor, which you don't have a lot of hopes for, you pitch to them, you see you hear what they say. And since it's not something that probably someone who will probably give you money, ask for the feedback, iterate, improve your pitch deck, and go next. Maybe on like 10th VC, you'll get it right and somebody will give you money. We have 1 fund and 2 angels coming in for the seed round.
Okay, 1 fund and 2 angels. In the end,
it's a public information. You can look it up on PR Times or somewhere if you're really interested.
Yeah. PR Times, by the way, for people who do not know, PR Times is also when many startups actually announce product launches and product launches, fundraising and stuff like that. So it's actually an interesting way for some of you to actually kind of get the feel of how the Japanese startup system works. Sometimes if you are, for example, looking for an internship, this could also be a way for you to look at, to contact companies which have recently gathered funds and approach them directly to say that, maybe I can code or something. Can you have an internship with me? Just one thing that actually does work. And this is something that I personally know as well. Question also though, when you're talking about VCs, right, and your angel investors, how did you actually get to know them in the first place? Did these come through referrals, or were these people that you cold emailed, LinkedIn cold message? How did you approach them?
There were funds where I just shoot an email, from Toyawase, from contact us category. There were people who came up to me during workshops. There were people when, for example, when you have like a mentor or like an angel, he or she can connect you to funds. So, or if say you're talking to some VC who says, well, who doesn't say that your plan is bad, but who say, well, I'm sorry, we don't invest in apps. So he's not saying that you suck, right? He's just saying it's not our industry. And in that case, maybe he can connect you to someone else. That's also really good. So always ask if they can connect you to someone else. Well, if they say that, sorry, you suck, it's better not to ask, because you probably won't get a good referral. But if something like that happens, always ask for a referral. What else? You can actually just write somebody on Facebook. In case of Japanese market, not a lot of people use LinkedIn, so approach through Facebook. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Do everything, basically, right?
Just don't be too,
obnoxious about it. Obnoxious about it. Because I also do get some people writing to me obnoxious messages, and I'm like, I don't think I can work with you, neither am I going to refer to you.
When you're writing a cold email, you shouldn't be like, dear Mr. or Miss, you should be to somebody, and there should be a reason why you're writing to this person and why he or she should find you interesting. So don't just write like 1,000 template emails to many people.
Really, just be nice, be personable, make people want to help you, because nobody is obliged to help you in the beginning. No one. So that's one very important thing that I think people will want to know. On that point though, the people who did you have a high success rate for people who actually got to know through referrals?
Yes, referrals work best. Referrals are the best because they already, especially if you get referral from like a person who's established in the industry, right? You get like positive bias against you. And when we're talking about seed round and you don't have any numbers, you basically just have only you, maybe your team. The first meeting is just your face and what you're saying in your pitch deck. I would say that if that's a fund that you definitely want to get money from, referrals work best.
which is also more why your networking is also very important, and also like networking with other startups so that they can refer you to, if they're a seed A, if they're a series A, for example, if they're more advanced in their funding, they could refer you to whoever funded them before and stuff like that. This is why your networking is very important everywhere. This is not just in Japan, maybe more so in Japan because of the name card culture, but even this logic applies in the Singapore scene, in Silicon Valley as well. So that's why networking also, and I'm going to say this, and this is people who have heard me speak on other topics, you know what I'm going to say, get out of school. You can't just stay in school. If you want to do these kind of things, you really cannot just stay in school. Anna, I think you would agree, right?
Yeah, definitely. One more point is, in my case, I spoke to like 40 funds, and in the end, I had like 3 that were really interested. So it's okay. It's okay to have this rate. It's really low, and don't be discouraged if 1, 2, 3, 5 people in a row say that you suck. It's okay. They do that all the time. That's their job.
That's the job.
Yeah.
Their job is not to give you money. Their job is to fail people, and only in this very small case will they give you money. So
yeah.
Okay, so we have an anonymous question here, which is 2 questions. The second one, we already talked about how to approach investors. The first one is very general, so I'm just going to leave it to you how you're going to, like, you know, what you want to explore with it. But how hard was it to get traction during the start?
It really depends on your business model, on whether you were investing in the community before you launched the product. If you were developing community beforehand, actually it might be easy to get traction first, but then you get traction what to do next, right? So this kind of say you get traction for 2 months, but what do you do on the 3rd one? So it's really specific. But I say it's hard. As I mentioned, according to my experience, having an app, developing it, and then just putting in an app store. When you put it in the app store, you actually start all this development stuff. It was like a preparation. So never think that if you create something and put it somewhere out there, the traction will appear in its own. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard. I would definitely say it's hard. 99% of cases, it's hard.
Most of the times when you just put your application out, you don't put it out for it to be successful. You put it out to learn from it, right? And you see, oh, this feature is more used than that feature, which can be entirely the opposite of what you expect from the beginning. When we're talking about software startups, it's more important for you to change than to do something perfect and try to do something, like, you know, very good at the start. That's what I feel as well. So definitely, I definitely do see what you mean by that. Well, this is an interesting question. Very broad, but this is also, I think, that something that I think many founders would have many different interpretations of. What advice do you have? Okay, let's, so there's a thing about like the share division of the company. So let's talk about that one first. That one is generally speaking a bit more straightforward. So your share division in the company, like, you know, I'm expecting that this, I half think that this refers to between the co-founders. But yeah, anything about that?
So first, you need to understand that American law, European law, and Japanese law in that case are different. And Japanese law protects minority shareholders more than the American. So in Japanese case, there are a lot of say contexts in which you should vote. Well, there should be 3 out of 4 right proportion vote. So investors really, well, if you're at seed stage, they look into the share division of your company, and having 50% division might not be the best in Japanese case scenario. So mostly investors and funds prefer that they have one person who's accountable and responsible for everything. Yeah. Now, if you have a company that's just rocketing, booming, growing like to the skies, right? Nobody cares about your shares. If you were booming, raise your seed round, and now the growth has slowed down, you might start experiencing problems. You might start hearing some voices around you, etc., etc. So, as I said, it depends I would say that in most cases, they would be asking you who's in charge, who's responsible, and who will take, all this accountability of having a startup. But there are some funds that might be more or less okay with like 50-50 kind of a division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the second part of the question is keeping everyone engaged in the mission and the vision. What's your own approach to this? Keeping everybody within like the mission and the vision.
It depends on the stage. As for my experience, I would say that if you just launched something, if you're not yet getting funding, if you're striving basically for your survival at this point, and if somebody not engaged, maybe it's better to let them go, because it's a stage where it's a core of the company. If the core is rotten, everything will be rotten from now on. So be sure to ask yourself whether you're okay with working with this kind of person. If they're not committing now, will they be committing in 7 years from now? Yeah. So, but of course, when you're growing and you're expanding into the CEO's role to keep everybody engaged and sharing the vision, yes, you're right. What I believe is that when it's core team, this should be the person who are like in their, how do you say this? Incorporation of the vision, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. We go back to visa issues here. So what is your current visa status? Do you still work with a student visa or something like that? Or like the 2-year visa provided by the university? This was mentioned in the last seminar, but what about your current case actually? Yeah.
I'm still on student visa. I might be changing it soon. I'm still trying to, I still have a lot to discuss with my investors and stuff. I'm on student visa. It's possible to have your startup when you have a student visa, but it depends on how much hours you have in your university, how many hours you have in your university, whether you have, whether you're in a lab, whether you're a TA, what your professor thinks of it, what university thinks of it. So I wouldn't say that like it's for everybody, it's possible to do a startup while you're in university. It might not be, as I said, it depends on your contract. It depends on what kind of conditions you came to Japan. And I would suggest to talk to your professor, university, and to directly. In my case, I didn't ask any lawyer. I emailed directly to the immigration officer and person who was in charge of this. Next, not just immigration officer, but like Max person. I talked with Max person, and they said that also it's important not to get direct salary from your startup. If you're okay with that, if you're okay to not get money directly from your startup as an employee, then you can do it.
So we talked a lot about this actually in our previous seminar. So people who want to hear more about this, please look at the previous seminar. We talk about the startup visa and stuff like that. But just to add on to this, so the salary point is basically the question that we're talking about here is to what extent does your Baito permit allow you to do things regarding entrepreneurship in Japan? And there is some gray area here. The rules changed 2 years ago, so the thing is that we're still kind of figuring out what the hell is happening here. Sorry for swearing, but yeah, so just be aware of that. One way that we did mention last time is that, you know, in the same way that Anna, you actually took 2 years doing something before you started the company formally, right?
Yeah.
So one way of actually starting something without actually dealing with the problems of the Baito permit and the Baito permit and the legal situation is that start something small as an individual first. There is nothing in the law which stops you from having a hobby. So just start a hobby first, bootstrap. And from there, if things go well, this is also how you validate whether whatever you want to do works or not. So yeah, start something small, do it with friends. It is a hobby. Let's not talk about money yet. But if there is money from there, individual proprietor, possible. I posted about that in the MSA members area before. What does your Baito permit allow you to do? Please take a look at that. But yeah, so it is possible. Just be careful. just be careful, because the thing is that, you know, there are people who have been deported for falling foul of the immigration law. So yeah, just be careful about that. I think we've got space for 1 or 2 questions more. So please, like, you know, ask your questions and upvote each other's ones. There's one thing about actually, I just had a very random question for you as well. So your law degree was actually useful for you.
The only context in which it was useful, but yes.
I am sorry. I am also an undergraduate, not in law, but in politics, in a very strange way, you know, because I do this organization, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like my politics degree does somehow help me when I'm talking to people. But yeah, well, it was worth studying.
At least, yeah.
But yeah, so we've this question is about like administration and filings regards to company registration. I'm assuming your yearly yearly like board meetings, as well as your taxes and stuff like that. You know, do you do it all yourself? Did you learn to do it by yourself? Or like, how do you handle all this like bureaucratic like stuff?
So we have an accountant, and we're out. Well, part of it was sourced to the accountant, and that's the biggest problem. The rest, the bookkeeping, I wouldn't say that that's a lot of trouble when you're still on the seed round. Even your board meeting is not that strictly, determined by law. So you don't need to prepare actually a lot of papers on that. But when you have a funding, or when you need to make some changes in your how it's called, like kaisha toki, right, in like legal department, I did by myself. If you're uncomfortable doing it by yourself, any shihoshoshi, any notary public can do that. And they take like $100 for that each time. That's a lot, but it might be worth it. So it's not as complicated. Taxes are a burden, but as I mentioned, we have an accountant.
Yeah. You would want somebody who's basically like a qualified kaikeshi here in Japan if you're doing a company. Let's just take one more question and we're done. So this is a question from Chris, who asked, your comment about Japanese law protecting minority shareholders was interesting. Would you be able to share one situation where being the majority shareholder in a startup is actually more problematic in Japan? I'm not exactly sure what this is, because I'm actually not very familiar with Japanese corporate law regarding shareholder protection. So, any thoughts about this? Yes.
I can't say about particular case, but let's say that in the US, in cases when you need just one, when you just need 51% or 50.1, in Japan you might need 75. So you need to have more people on board with you to make a decision.
Would this involve like things like, for example, like issuance of new shares and stuff like that?
Yeah. Okay, so it's hard to me to talk about, as I said, particular cases, but something like issuing of new shares, maybe
appointing a director,
appointing a new director, changing like board members, and other clauses in corporate law. In Japan, it like 75% might be needed. In the US, 51 would be okay. So.
In any case, the point is that if you want to actually do this seriously, please educate yourself on this. Yeah, for everyone who's listening, please educate yourself on this, because do not, I will say them some things. Do not come to Japan expecting that things be the same. They are often not the same. As like Anna mentioned already, for B2C marketing, for example, mailing list, yes, common throughout the whole world, but line being an important marketing tactic in Japan, only in Japan. For example, B2B, same thing. Your name card, how important a name card is, also very Japanese. This is an interesting start. This is an interesting environment that's very different from many places in the world. But the fact is that there is opportunity for the fact that maybe there's less competition. And less competition because there are not that many people like us who are internationals in Japan and who have actually a problem statement and who have resources that normal Japanese entrepreneurs cannot leverage. So we also have an advantage on that. So I just wanted to say that in the end. So yeah, I think we're just 10 minutes, 7 minutes to closing. So I just wanted to pass time for you, Anna, like any closing remarks or anything that we could help you with or anything like that. And yeah, just anything for you, like just a bit of
Oh
free
yeah.
time to say anything. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope maybe if you have just some questions, you can add me on Facebook. Maybe I can help with them. Lately, I don't have that much time, so it might take some time for me to reply, but I'll still try to. Something you can, right now, we're actually hiring sales. More sales. If you have a high proficiency of Japanese language, you can actually go on our website and shoot us a message saying that you're interested in being a Flora member. Yeah, I guess that's it for me.
Corporate sales?
Yes, corporate
sales.
sales.
Okay, corporate sales. And yeah, so same thing here. I'm also involved in other projects to boost entrepreneurship in Japan. Once again, I am also quite busy. This is just a voluntary, by the way. People misunderstand. Max does not pay me to do this. I am doing this entirely voluntarily. Okay, so yeah, so if anybody wants to contact me as well regarding entrepreneurship in Japan, please do so. But please don't be obnoxious. Please don't be obnoxious. We sometimes get very obnoxious emails, and I'm like, like seriously, you are not going to make it in Japan if you're doing this. But yeah, be nice. But yeah, thanks so much for everyone. I know that there's lots of information here. The recording of this will be put publicly in the MSA channels. So the thing is that if you want to have a review of this, please follow our Facebook, join our Facebook group, join our mailing list, so that you can get the link once it's out. Okay. So, and on that point, thanks everyone, and thanks Anna, for your time today and for talking so much despite having a bit of the weather's weird. The weather is weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope something I said might be helpful to somebody. Yeah. Let's change, innovate Japan together.
Yes, agreed. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today, and I'm very glad that we've had such a rich discussion and had very insightful questions. And looking forward to our next entrepreneurship webinar. I do not know when it is, but the thing is that we're definitely going to do more. Okay, so thanks everyone, and have a great day. Bye bye.